today's video. Today we're going to be making the Sabyasachi blouse, the one from the Fiza collection. I'm going to make it all over again because I lost the original footage, so I couldn't show you how I made it. But this is the one that I made first. So we've got some nice smooth seams here. I'm going to show you how I made this princess cut, nice deep neck, and I've made it so that it's very comfortable at the armhole, but there's no darts. So I'm going to show you how I did that. And this is not to say this is how Sabyasachi cuts his blouses, not at all. This is just my take on how to make a really smooth, polished finish like Sabyasachi does. You can have this with sleeves or without, that's completely your choice. The pattern will be exactly the same for the main area. The only thing you must watch out for is how wide you want the shoulder to be. So if you want it cut in, just keep it less. If you want it over the shoulder, quite a nice thick shoulder line, you then just keep more fabric here when I go to cut this. You can see how I've only got one part here with no darts, and I've got my princess cut here in the middle area and a really nice deep neckline. You're going to need at least 1 meter fabric. You're going to need your measuring tape, a matching zip, matching thread. Not only just thread need to match your fabric, but you also need some to match your trimming. You're going to need your scissors, and let me show you my trimming. After going through all of my trimming collection, I chose this trimming to go on the dupatta and this trimming to go near the neckline, along with the trimming that's actually on the fabric, which is like this. Now this is probably just like a test that they do when they machine this fabric together, and what I want to do is I want to put my trimming on the edge of that and have it along here, maybe at the bottom, at the end of the sleeve, and at the top of the lehenga. I've had this for absolute years. I've never used it, but I've always thought it was really pretty. What I thought I could do is put this on the dupatta with some of the trimming running down the middle, because again this really looks pretty as well. I don't have enough of either this trimming or this trimming to go all the way around the dupatta, but I'll just find something that matches to go around the other three. At least that way, if you're going to have it on your head, it's going to match what you're wearing and it'll still look really good. No one's going to see what's behind you. So let's start cutting this blouse, and I'll show you how I got in that really smooth and comfort fit on the blouse. To be able to actually make our blouse fit us really well, the trick is going to be measure yourself really well. So really look at your contour, really look at how much space you have between your neck and your shoulder, your armpit. You know, really, if you want this really fitted and to be really smooth, get this measurement absolutely correct. Make sure your seam allowance space is just the amount that you need, and that way you won't have any extra fabric and then it won't look as fitted as it needs to be. So you almost want it to be slightly tight to give it that stretch polish finish. And when it comes to the sleeve, that might get tricky, but I have another hack for you how to get that sitting really nicely. Now, as you can see on the one that I made before, the blouse has got a central part, which is this with the neck, and two pieces on the side, so the left and the right. So we've got 3 pieces making up the front. What we want to do is actually use our measurements to get this shape absolutely perfectly fitting you here. The way we're going to do that is to know what your breast point measurement is, your under bust measurement, your shoulder measurement. So you've got all of those standard measurements, which if you don't know how to take, you can check my other video on how to measure yourself, whereby we do the basic measurements for a blouse. But then to get a really smooth finish, because we want to have this large neckline, but we don't want it to interfere with the shape. So the way we're going to get that extra measurement is by actually measuring our contour and knowing where we come out, where we go in, so we get that absolutely smooth. I can't stress that enough. So it may actually be easier and more cost effective if you cut this on an actual paper pattern and use that onto your fabric, because if you have got expensive fabric, you do not want to get it wrong. I always use different scissors when I'm cutting paper, okay? Otherwise they will blunt your sewing scissors really quickly, and trust me, believe it or not, these get worn out very quick, and then it's pretty pricey and difficult to find a person who knows how to sharpen them properly. For our pattern, we need to cut 2 of these side panels and just 1 for the middle. Let's start with the middle. I'm going to cut my neckline, so know how much you want to cut here. Let's measure this. This one is at 10.5. We also need to know how wide we're going to keep our neckline, so just this distance here. So I'm keeping my neck at 3.25 wide. That would give me 6.5. And from here diagonally to the center, I want it to be 10.5. So just here. And you can cut this 3.25, 10.5. Want that. The length that we want is, I'm going to take it from the absolute top of the shoulder to the bottom of the centerpiece, 15. I'm going to allow for seam allowance. I'm going to cut this at 16 inches. That's how long I want to keep it. The next measurement you're going to need is your breast point to breast point. Mine is 7, and that measurement needs to come exactly at your breast point. So you're going to actually cut towards your breast point. I know mine is at 7, so let's make that mark at 3.5. And I've just put that in anywhere, just alongside. Right from the nape of your neck is 10. So 10 down, 3.5 across. Sounds like a crossword. I'm going to mark it with a cross. If you're using a blouse that you've got already at home, the way you want to do it is you would normally have a dart here anyway and a dart here. So my space in the middle is 5.25, and because I need to leave some seam allowance, I'm going to make that 6, so half of that being 3. I know my pattern needs to be 3 at the bottom. The next measurement you're going to need, and this is the last one to be able to cut this, is where this seam comes on your shoulder. And the way to keep this is always have, and this is if you're having sleeves, yeah, always have this middle one at 1.5 and this one slightly less, whatever that might be for you. I'm going to make my next marking at 1.5. And again, by the time I've put in seam allowance, I'm just going to do it at 1.75. And just to make sure, still at 3.5, still at 3. And now what you want to do is take your ruler and plot in your next line. This one is from the mid shoulder to the breast point. And this is from the breast point to the mid of your midriff front. All you need to do now is cut along this line. Try and keep your pattern nice and smooth. Oh, wrong scissors. Must never do that. That is pretty criminal. Okay, and this is all you need to go in the middle part. And the most important thing is that the fitting is absolutely nice around your neckline, and if you feel it's too close, you can always take away a little bit more. I haven't cut away anything for my shoulder drop at the moment, but we'll do that once the fabric is together. I think that's the best way to get that nice and smooth. So for now, I'm just going to keep that straight at the top. And also that shoulder drop is so different person to person, so just measure yourself and see where you whether you're really slopey, like some people are very slopey right from here. I'm quite broad, but you know, my gradient is downwards. Sometimes people are absolutely straight, so check exactly what your body shape is, and there's no pattern that can give you this information. The only way you can make this fit you really well is if you know how to measure yourself accurately. When I made this side panel, I cut it on the bias, and by cutting it on the bias, it gives you this nice stretch here, and it gives you a nice comfort fit, and there was no need to put in a dart, which I really like. My armhole is nice and comfortable at 8.5 inches. Put in your marking, so 8.5 from the top is here. Okay, and I don't want it to be any bigger than that, so if anything, I'm going to keep it smaller at 8 so that I've got space for seam allowance. The difference between the absolute armpit and the shoulder, and I want to know how long it is here, so I know how far to curve inwards. I can see the top of my shoulder edge there and my armpit here, and that's 3.5. So I'm going to take 3.5 and I'm going to plot it at my shoulder here. You can either put in a line straight down, and you want this to be 8 inches. Do one straight across. You're just going to curve this off, just using your literal wrist movement. Or if you do have one of those armhole rulers, I think they're French, you can get one of those and you can get this shape from that. So let's cut that away. My next measurement I would need is this one here. So between the sleeve and the first edge that we've got, and for me that is 1 inch 0.2 little ones, yeah, so 2 bits of 1/8. So let's put that measurement onto here, and for seam allowance I'm going to keep that in at just over 1.5, because it's going to go into your sleeve and into your middle seam. So just put that just over 1.5. Again, we're going to need our breast point, which I know is 10 inches down for me. So put in a mark at 10 inch. And the next measurement we want is from your armpit to the breast point here. And that is 5.5. So we need to make sure, let's do that at 6.5, because again we've got 2 seams, one on the inner and one of the outer. That's 6.5 to 10. And you're going to want that to come here. This is 10. This is 6.5, and they meet here. Now these 2 points that you've just put in, join them together And your last point is going to be 4.5, and we're going to put in 1 inch for allowance to make that 5.5 in this direction. Now from your armpit to that point, you can draw in a line. And you can start to cut away all of your extra bits of paper. The middle and the side. So we want, the more we tighten that, the more it's going to fit you here. Yeah. Again, everybody is different in that area, so do make sure you make your own measurements really accurately. Next, we're going to cut our sleeve pattern. Let's compare it to a regular sleeve pattern. So this is one I made out of a menu. It's quite round and, you know, shaped here, but this is just for like a comfortable kameez. To get a real fit, this is the amount of difference you're going to see. So whereby a normal one would be here, that's at least 2 inches smaller. So 2.5 inches smaller than that. I'm having it 13 inches long at the top, and at the bottom it's only 5 inches. So these are the markings you want to put in. The way we're going to get the cut of our sleeve is either to use a blouse that you've used before. You can measure yourself. Ultimately, what you want to do is measure downwards 4 inches, and at each inch you're going to measure how much it is from the front seam to the back seam. If I put in my markings for each inch, that's 4, 3, 2, 1. Across, that's 2 inches, 4 inches, 6, and this one is 7. Okay, and this is a sort of slope that you want to get. When it comes to halfway, what you want to do is you want to go inwards. To cut the back of this sleeve, you're just going to join from this point to that point. So it's just going to be a straight and then the curve. And this is just going to be straight here. You can see the front of the sleeve is coming inwards. Just do your 4 inches downwards, measure yourself across at each one of those points, and then just put in that line. And then from here to here for the back, you're going to make that straight. For the front, you're going to bring it in. Using your paper scissors, you can just cut this out. And now we're going to cut away the front. And obviously this pattern can be used left and right, because you're going to place it in the opposite direction. Now we've got our pattern, we can place this on our fabric and cut 2 sleeves. My fabric, and I've halved it this way because I want to make this sleeve on a bias cut. And cut out your pattern. As you can see, I didn't leave too much seam allowance for the sleeve because this shape needs to be quite accurate to get that smooth finish. When you come to the tip, just cut it straight rather than pointy. and make one more just like that. If I'm just going to put it on my fabric, I can get my sleeve in here nicely, quite good. Make sure you always pin your fabric when you're cutting it away so that it doesn't move. And then just cut around your sleeve. My pattern is also going in the same direction of the sleeve, so I know that they're going to be symmetrical. Lay both sleeves side by side, work out which one you're going to use on the left and the right. Just see which way these patterns take your fancy. I think this way. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, now you can place them on top of each other and cut away the front. Place your pattern on top of your fabric like that. And you don't have to do anything to your back cutting. Just the front of your sleeve needs to be taken in here. I'm going to cut away the fabric. Just following my pattern, both sleeves together. We have our two sleeves. We've got our middle front, we've got our two front side panels, and we've got our two sleeves with the back and the front cut there. So the only thing left to do now is the back of the blouse, which I'm not going to make a pattern for. I'm going to show you how easy it is just to go straight onto the fabric. This particular blouse doesn't have a back neck because we want the trimming to go right nice and neatly around our neckline there. So I'm not going to cut anything away from here. I've just got a slight shape there so that I know where it is. My armhole is always ready at 9 inches, but because this is really fitted, I'm going to make that 8.5. So I'm just going to put in a nip at 8.5. And my shoulder to shoulder point is 14. So I'm going to cut this at 15, giving me some seam allowance. So I'm just going to put in my nip here. And now I just want to cut away my armhole. It's always a good idea to take one extra measurement, which is just from here to here. Now, if you can get someone to measure your back, that would be really good. On me, that's 13. So I'm going to just put in a pin so I know where it is. 13 would be 7.5. So I'm just going to put in a pin here. And what that allows is just a little bit of guidance on this shape. We just want to cut from our first mark to the pin. Just want to slightly curve it. Just letting the scissors do all the work. And now I'm just going to go straight to here to here. So I'm going to take that way. I can see my pin mark. And that's all I'm going to do for the back. This is the back of my blouse. There's my middle panel, side panels, and this is going to give us this flexibility here. And we won't need to put in any darts. That's the back, and this is the front, so it goes on this side. And this one, you can see it's cut away more at the front and it goes on this side. We've got all of our pieces and it's time to start joining these together. So I'm going to start with the front, middle panel and side panel. It's a good idea to pin in your front panel and the side just in 3 places. So at the bottom, right at the center. So this is going to be your breast point. And once you've got your seam up to here, you're just going to turn it so that you can sew in the top like that. Put your first seam in from your shoulder to your breast point. You don't want this to pull because it is partly on the bias. That's my breast point. Now I want to take my seam straight down. I'm holding my fabric really securely and I'm just feeding it through like that. That looks quite good. We may need to improve the breast point there. Now do the same on the other side. So we've got our front all together and it's come out quite nice. I like the way it looks. It looks like that's going to fit me really well, but we won't know until we have joined the back piece. So start by joining the shoulders. I've pinned together my shoulders, and once I've put in my seam, I'm going to cut away the extra. So I'm going to put in my seam starting here, and I'm going to lower it so that the gradient is about 1/2 inch from the front where my nape of my neck is to the shoulder. You're going to place your 2 corners of your armpits from the front right onto the back like that. And as you can see, it gives your front piece just a slight stretch, not too much. You don't want it to start to puff up here, but that's where you want to pin it, because that will give you a slight stretch in the armpit. And that's how we manage to get away with not having a dart but still have that comfort fit. So pin in your fabric where the 2 armpits meet, just like that, slightly pulling it. And then you want to measure that this is still the right size for your bust. My bust measurement is 35.5, and if I measure this, that's giving me exactly 36. Put in some more pins, 1/4 inch inwards. Notice I didn't remove the pin I already had there. At the bottom, I need it to be 30 centimeters all the way around, 1/2 inch in on both sides. Now let's go to the sewing machine and sew in our shoulders and our side seam. And make sure this second pin is 1/2 inch down from the first one. So here. This middle seam can just be opened out and ironed down. That'll give it a nice finish. So definitely open it out and sew it down when you go to put in this shoulder seam. Like that. There. As soon as you've got your fabric in the right place, you can remove your first pin. And we want to end up here. And do the same on the other side. Now we can put in our side seam, and I'm keeping my zip on my left side. So if I turn, that's my left side, this would be my right side. I want to sew this side down. So just put in this seam. Now that you've sewn in your shoulder seams and your side seam, you can actually try this on. It'll give you an idea of whether something needs to be taken in or taken out. Now comes the lovely part of trying on your outfit, adjusting the measurement, trying it on again and adjusting it until you're happy with the fit that you're getting here. So as you can see from this seam, I've actually taken in a little bit more here. That gives me a tighter fit here, and then it comes out. You can see on this side, it's just the original seam that you've got. But then when you go to put this seam in, you're just taking it right from the breast point along this one, bringing it in slowly here, and then out again at the shoulder. Also, you notice I unpicked my shoulder so that I can do that easier. The other thing you might find useful is I've put in about an inch seam on the side where I'm going to have the zip. That helps you put it on and know where it's going to sit, and then you can just hold it from here, which is easier when you're trying it on than just having an open piece and not knowing where it's going to fit. Just stretching the side and the shoulder seam in so that this is nice and taut, and that's where you're not going to need that dart.